The rain started exactly as they lowered Catherine Walsh into the ground, as if the sky itself was weeping for a woman whose husband couldn't be bothered to. Marcus Walsh stood at the graveside in his Tom Ford suit, one hand holding an umbrella that covered only himself, the other checking his Rolex with barely concealed impatience. Beside him, pressed close enough to be inappropriate, stood Vivian Cross in a red dress. Not burgundy, not wine-colored, but scarlet red to a funeral. Her manicured hand rested possessively on Marcus's arm while mourners whispered behind gloved hands and judged with narrowed eyes. Catherine's best friend, Patricia Chen, watched from across the grave and felt rage burn through her grief like acid. Marcus hadn't cried. Not once during the service, not when the pastor spoke about Catherine's kindness and intelligence, not when her colleagues from the museum shared stories about her passion for art history. He'd simply stood there, bored and restless, while the woman who'd loved him for 12 years was committed to the earth. "We should say a few words," Patricia had suggested that morning at the funeral home, her voice thick with tears. About who Catherine really was. Marcus had waved her off dismissively. The pastor covered everything. No need to drag this out longer than necessary. Now, as the final prayers were spoken and mourners began the slow migration back to their cars, Marcus pulled Vivian closer and whispered something that made her laugh. The sound carried across the cemetery, sharp and wrong, like glass breaking in a church. Patricia approached them with measured steps, her grief temporarily overshadowed by a fury so intense it made her hands shake. "Marcus, we need to discuss Catherine's arrangements. Her personal effects, her studio, the pieces she was working on." "I've already handled it," Marcus replied without looking at her, his eyes scanning the parking lot as if calculating his escape. "Estate liquidators are coming Tuesday. Everything will be sold or donated." "Everything?" "Marcus, Catherine spent 15 years collecting those materials, building that body of work. You can't just..." "Patricia, I appreciate your concern, but Catherine's hobbies were just that. Hobbies." His tone suggested the conversation was over. "I'm moving forward with my life, and that means clearing out the past." "Moving forward?" Patricia's voice climbed despite her efforts to remain composed. "Marcus, your wife died 3 days ago." 3 days. I know exactly how long it's been." For the first time, Marcus met her eyes, and Patricia saw something there that chilled her more than the December rain. "I know Catherine would want me to be happy. To find someone who actually appreciates what I've built instead of hiding in a studio pretending to be an artist." Vivian's smile widened. She was 32 to Catherine's 45, with the kind of polished beauty that came from expensive salons and personal trainers. "Marcus has been so devastated," she said, her voice dripping with manufactured sympathy. "I've been helping him through this difficult time." "I'm sure you have." Patricia's gaze moved between them, noting how comfortable they looked together, how their body language spoke of intimacy that couldn't have developed in 3 days. "Tell me, Vivian, when exactly did you start helping Marcus through his grief? Before or after Catherine's diagnosis?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "That's enough, Patricia. Catherine had stage 4 ovarian cancer, Marcus. She was dying for 8 months. 8 months where you claimed to be working late, taking business trips, helping her through treatment." Patricia's voice shook with barely controlled rage. "How long have you been sleeping with her assistant?" The mourners who remained had gone silent, watching the confrontation with morbid fascination. Vivian had worked at the museum where Catherine curated the contemporary art collection. She'd been hired 2 years ago, young and eager and full of admiration for both Catherine's expertise and Marcus's wealth. "My relationship with Vivian is none of your business," Marcus said coldly. "And frankly, Patricia, your obsession with my personal life is becoming concerning. Catherine is gone. I'm allowed to move on." "Move on?" "She's still warm in the ground. Goodbye, Patricia." Marcus turned away, guiding Vivian toward his Mercedes. Over his shoulder, he called back, "The estate liquidators will contact you about retrieving any personal items Catherine might have left at your place. Everything else is being cleared out." Patricia stood in the rain, watching them drive away, and felt something crystallize in her chest. Catherine had known. She'd known about Marcus and Vivian, had known her husband was counting the days until he'd be free, had known she was dying alone while he built a future with someone else. But Catherine had also been planning something. Patricia remembered their last conversation, 2 days before Catherine slipped into the coma she never woke from. Catherine had been weak, her skin paper-thin and gray, but her eyes had held a fierce intelligence that death couldn't diminish. "I need you to do something for me," Catherine had whispered, her hand gripping Patricia's with surprising strength. "There's a video. My attorney has it. Robert Chen, my cousin. He knows what to do, but I need you to make sure it happens. Promise me, Patricia. Promise me you'll make sure Marcus sees it." "Sees what?" "Kath, what are you talking about?" "My will. My real will." Catherine's smile had been sharp despite her weakness. "Marcus thinks he knows what I'm leaving behind. He thinks he knows who I was. He has no idea." Patricia had promised, confusion mixing with grief, not understanding what Catherine meant. Now, standing in the cemetery as rain soaked through her coat, she pulled out her phone and dialed the number Catherine had made her memorize. Robert Chen's office, a professional voice answered. "This is Patricia Chen. I need to speak with Robert about Catherine Walsh's estate." She said he'd know what to do. There was a pause, then Robert's voice came through, warm and certain. "Patricia. I've been waiting for your call. We need to meet immediately." Catherine left very specific instructions, and there's a timeline we need to follow. "What kind of timeline?" "The kind that depends on how quickly Marcus moves on from his grief." Robert's tone carried something that sounded like satisfaction. "How quickly do you think he'll remarry?" Patricia thought about Vivian's possessive hand on Marcus's arm, about the red dress and the barely concealed intimacy. "Very quickly. Maybe weeks." "Good. Then we don't have much time to prepare. Can you meet me at my office in an hour?" After hanging up, Patricia looked back at Catherine's grave, now a mound of earth covered with flowers that would wilt and die just like their giver. "I don't know what you planned, Kath," she whispered. "But I promise I'll make sure it happens." The rain fell harder, washing away footprints and tears, leaving only mud and memory and the promise of secrets yet to be revealed. Marcus Walsh poured himself a scotch in the home he'd shared with Catherine for 12 years, feeling nothing but relief. The funeral was over, the performance complete, and he could finally stop pretending. Vivian emerged from the bedroom wearing one of his shirts, her blonde hair still damp from the shower. "I can't believe how many people were staring," she said, curling up on the leather sofa Catherine had chosen. "Like we were doing something wrong." "Let them stare." Marcus sat beside her, his hand finding her bare knee. "In a few months, they'll forget all about it. People always do." "A few months?" Vivian's pout was calculated, perfected through practice. "Marcus, I don't want to wait months. I want everyone to know we're together. I want to start our life." Marcus had been expecting this conversation. Vivian wasn't the type to wait patiently in the shadows. She wanted status, recognition, the social position that came with being Mrs. Marcus Walsh. And truthfully, he wanted the same thing. Wanted to erase Catherine's memory from this house, from his life, from everything. "What did you have in mind?" "A wedding. Soon. Before the end of the year." Vivian's eyes gleamed with ambition. "Something beautiful and public. Something that makes a statement. Catherine just died 3 days ago. People would talk. People are already talking, Marcus. They'll talk whether we wait 6 months or 6 years. At least this way, we control the narrative." She shifted closer, her voice dropping to that breathy register he found irresistible. "We can say it was love at first sight. That we tried to resist but the heart wants what it wants. We'll look romantic instead of scandalous." Marcus considered it. His business partners might raise eyebrows, but Vivian was right, people loved a good love story. And he was tired of sneaking around, tired of pretending to mourn a woman who'd bored him for the last 5 years of their marriage. When were you thinking? New Year's Eve. The Riverside estate. Black tie, champagne at midnight, the works. Vivian's excitement was infectious. I already checked and they have an opening. We could have 200 guests, live music, an ice sculpture of swans. It would be the event of the season. That's less than a month away. Which makes it urgent and romantic. She kissed him, tasting like expensive wine and ambition. Please, Marcus. I don't want to wait anymore. I've waited 2 years already, watching you with her, pretending to be just your wife's assistant. I want to be yours publicly. I want the world to know. The mention of the 2 years made Marcus pause. Vivian had been patient, discreet, playing her role perfectly while Catherine slowly died. She deserved this. Hell, they both deserve this. Okay, he said, decision made. New Year's Eve it is. Vivian squealed and threw her arms around him, already pulling out her phone to start planning. Marcus refilled his scotch and looked around the living room, mentally cataloging everything that would need to go. Catherine's art books, her photographs, the small sculptures she'd collected from her travels. All of it would be cleared out, replaced with Vivian's modern aesthetic and forward momentum. His phone buzzed with a text from the estate liquidator. Available Tuesday 10 a.m. for walkthrough. We'll have crew ready to clear everything by end of week. Perfect. By the time he married Vivian, there would be no trace of Catherine left in this house. It would be like she'd never existed. What Marcus didn't know was that across town, Patricia Chen sat in Robert Chen's law office, watching a video that Catherine had recorded 2 months before her death. On the screen, Catherine looked thin and tired, but her eyes blazed with fierce intelligence. If you're watching this, it means I'm gone and Marcus has moved on faster than anyone thought possible, Catherine said, her voice weak but clear. It means he's probably already planning his future with Vivian, spending the money he thinks he's inheriting, living in the house he thinks he owns. Let him plan. Let him celebrate. Let him think he's won. Because what Marcus doesn't know, what nobody knows except you, Robert, and now Patricia, is that Catherine Walsh wasn't just a museum curator with a modest inheritance. Catherine Walsh was Catherine Montgomery before she married. And the Montgomery family doesn't just have money. We have empires. Patricia's hand flew to her mouth. She'd known Catherine for 15 years and never once had her friend mentioned being a Montgomery. The Montgomery family owned half of Manhattan's real estate, controlled a media empire, and had a foundation worth billions. I walked away from all of it when I was 25, Catherine continued. I wanted to be valued for my mind, not my family name. I wanted to marry someone who loved me, not my inheritance. So I changed my name, built my career on my own merit, and when I met Marcus, I thought I'd found someone who saw me for who I really was. She paused, pain flashing across her face. I was wrong. But I was also patient. I've been documenting everything for 2 years. Every affair, every lie, every moment he thought I was too sick or too stupid to notice. And now he's going to learn what happens when you underestimate a Montgomery woman. Robert stopped the video and looked at Patricia. Catherine left very specific instructions. Marcus gets nothing from her estate because everything was held in her family trust. The house he thinks he owns? Catherine bought it with Montgomery money before they married. His share of her modest museum salary? That was an allowance she paid herself. The real Catherine Montgomery estate is worth approximately $3 billion. Patricia felt the room spin. $2 billion? 2.3. And it's all going to charities and foundations Catherine designated, with one exception. Robert smiled, and it was sharp enough to cut. Catherine left you something special, Patricia. Her art collection. The pieces Marcus thinks are worthless hobbies? Several are original works by artists whose value has skyrocketed. All told, you're inheriting about $40 million in art. I don't understand. Why didn't she tell me? Because Catherine was playing a long game. She wanted Marcus to think he'd won. Wanted him to marry Vivian, to celebrate, to feel completely secure in his victory. And then Robert opened another file, this one containing wedding venue contracts and guest lists. Then she wanted to destroy him in the most public way possible. How? Robert turned his computer screen to show her the rest of Catherine's video. On screen, Catherine leaned forward, her expression fierce despite her illness. I want my video all played at Marcus's wedding reception. I want every guest, every business partner, every person he's trying to impress to know exactly what kind of man he is. I want Vivian to learn she married a penniless liar. And I want Marcus to spend the rest of his life knowing that the woman he thought was weak and boring completely destroyed him. Patricia stared at the screen, at her friend's face, at the justice Catherine had carefully constructed. When does he find out about the house? About the money? The day after his wedding. I've already filed the estate claims. The house will be seized to settle Catherine's trust obligations, which means Marcus will be evicted. Every asset he thinks he inherited will be frozen and redirected to the designated charities. He'll go from millionaire to bankrupt in about 48 hours. Robert's expression was professionally neutral, but his eyes gleamed with satisfaction. All we need to do is wait for the wedding invitation. It arrived 6 days after the funeral. Heavy cardstock with gold embossing, announcing the marriage of Marcus Theodore Walsh and Vivian Rose Cross on New Year's Eve at the Riverside estate. Patricia held the invitation and felt a fierce pride in her dead friend's strategic brilliance. Catherine had known. She'd known Marcus would move this quickly, would be this transparent in his disrespect. And she'd planned for every possibility with the precision of a woman who'd grown up in boardrooms and learned to think 10 moves ahead. What do we need to do? Patricia asked Robert. First, we make sure that video gets played. I'm in contact with the venue's AV team. For the right price, they'll queue up Catherine's video as part of the reception's entertainment. Marcus will think it's a slideshow tribute he approved. Robert pulled out a timeline. Second, we document everything. Every guest who attends, every dollar Marcus spends on this wedding using money that isn't actually his. It all becomes evidence of his character. And third? Third, we watch it all unfold. Catherine orchestrated this perfectly, Patricia. All we have to do is follow her script. Patricia looked down at the invitation again, at the elegant script announcing Marcus's marriage to his mistress, at the date chosen specifically to maximize celebration and minimize mourning. She thought about Catherine's last smile, about the way her friend had gripped her hand and made her promise. He has no idea what's coming, does he? Not even a clue. Robert's smile was razor-sharp. Marcus Walsh thinks he buried Catherine and her memory. He has no idea he's actually walking into the most expensive trap of his life. The invitation sat between them on the desk, innocuous and elegant, hiding the explosive revelation that would detonate in less than 3 weeks. Marcus Walsh was planning his dream wedding, spending money he thought was his, celebrating a future he thought was secure. Catherine Montgomery Walsh had spent her final months ensuring that future would crumble to dust. And soon, very soon, Marcus would learn what it cost to underestimate a dying woman's capacity for strategic vengeance. The Riverside estate glowed like something from a fairy tale, all twinkling lights and winter elegance. Marcus stood in the groom's suite adjusting his Armani tuxedo and felt a satisfaction so complete it was almost spiritual. Everything was perfect. The venue, the flowers, the guest list that read like a who's who of Boston's elite. In a few hours, he'd be married to Vivian, and Catherine would be nothing but an unfortunate chapter in his past. You look incredible, his best man, Trevor, said, handing him a scotch. Though I have to say, man, 3 weeks is fast even for you. When you know, you know. Marcus had perfected this line over the past weeks, delivering it with just enough romance to silence critics. Vivian and I tried to fight it, but life's too short to waste time pretending. Trevor nodded, though his expression suggested some doubt. And Catherine was okay with this? Before she passed, I mean. Marcus felt a flicker of irritation but kept his smile fixed. Catherine knew I deserved happiness. She would have wanted this for me. It was a lie so blatant that Marcus almost believed it himself. Catherine had known about the affair, he'd seen it in her eyes during those final months, in the way she'd look at him with something like pity mixed with contempt. But she'd been too weak to fight, too sick to care, and ultimately too insignificant to matter. His phone buzzed with a text from the estate liquidator, final walkthrough complete. House cleared. Check sent to your account. Marcus smiled, imagining the empty house now stripped of Catherine's presence. Tomorrow he and Vivian would begin redecorating, would transform that space into something modern and alive instead of cluttered with Catherine's pretentious art collection. Across the estate, in the bridal suite, Vivian preened in front of a full-length mirror, admiring the way her Vera Wang gown transformed her into every bride's fantasy. Her mother fussed with the veil while her sister, Rachel, looked on with barely concealed envy. "I still can't believe you pulled this off," Rachel said. 3 weeks after his wife dies and you've got him walking down the aisle. Marcus knows what he wants. Vivian's smile was triumphant. And what he wanted was me, not some boring museum curator who spent all her time with dead artists. Her mother shot Rachel a warning look. "Vivian, darling, you look absolutely stunning. Marcus is a lucky man." "I'm the lucky one," Vivian replied, though her tone suggested she believed quite the opposite. She'd worked hard for this moment, had played her cards perfectly for 2 years while Catherine slowly died. Now she was about to claim her prize, a wealthy husband, social status, and a future free from the financial struggles that had marked her childhood. What Vivian didn't know was that in the venue's AV booth, a technician named James was uploading a video file sent by Robert Chen's office. The file was labeled Wedding Tribute and came with very specific instructions about when to play it. James had been paid an extra $5,000 to make sure nothing went wrong. He'd also been shown documentation proving that the video was legally authorized by the deceased's estate attorney. "This is going to be one hell of a reception," James muttered to himself, checking the file one more time before queuing it up in the presentation software. The ceremony began at 7, precisely on schedule. 200 guests filled the estate's grand ballroom, watching as Vivian walked down an aisle lined with white roses and crystal votives. The officiant spoke about love conquering all, about second chances and new beginnings. Marcus slid a platinum band onto Vivian's finger and kissed her with enough passion to make several elderly relatives uncomfortable. "Ladies and gentlemen," the officiant announced with practiced enthusiasm, "I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Marcus Walsh." The ballroom erupted in applause. Not everyone clapping was comfortable with the timeline, but money and social obligation had drawn them here regardless. They moved into the reception hall, where tables sparkled with crystal and silver, where a 7-tier cake waited to be cut, where champagne flowed like water and every detail screamed of expensive taste and unlimited budget. Patricia Chen stood near the back, watching everything with a mixture of grief and anticipation. She'd worn black to the wedding, claiming it was her favorite color when questioned. In truth, she was still mourning, still raw from Catherine's loss, and the sight of Marcus celebrating made her stomach turn. Robert Chen appeared at her elbow, his expression neutral but his eyes alert. "The video is cued. It'll play right after the first dance, during what Marcus thinks is a slideshow of their relationship." "How did you manage that?" Vivian sent the AV team a USB drive with photos. "I sent them a different file with the same name and a very large bribe to make sure my version played instead." Robert's smile was thin. Catherine thought of everything. She even predicted they'd want a slideshow. The first dance began, Marcus and Vivian swaying to some romantic ballad while photographers captured every angle. They looked perfect together, Marcus in his tuxedo and Vivian in her princess gown, both smiling like they'd won the lottery. Which, they believed, they had. The song ended and guests applauded. The DJ's voice came through the speakers, warm and professional. "And now, the happy couple has prepared a special presentation to share their love story with all of you. Please direct your attention to the screens." 4 large screens positioned around the ballroom flickered to life. Marcus smiled, expecting to see the photos Vivian had selected, romantic shots of their secret relationship, carefully edited to hide the fact that most had been taken while Catherine was dying. Instead, Catherine's face filled the screens. Not the thin, dying Catherine from her final weeks, but Catherine from 2 months before her death, still pale and weak but with eyes that blazed with intelligence and purpose. The ballroom went silent. Marcus felt his heart stop. "Hello, Marcus," Catherine said from the grave, her voice clear and steady through the sound system. "If you're watching this, it means you've done exactly what I predicted you would. You've married Vivian. You've celebrated. You've probably already cleared out my belongings and erased any trace of me from the house we shared. You think you've won." Vivian grabbed Marcus's arm, her face draining of color. Around them, guests were murmuring, confused and fascinated in equal measure. "I need to tell you some things, Marcus. Things I should have told you years ago but didn't, because I wanted to marry someone who loved me for myself, not for my family name or money." Catherine's smile was sharp enough to cut. "My name before we married wasn't just Catherine Montgomery. I am Catherine Elizabeth Montgomery, sole heir to the Montgomery family fortune. You might have heard of us. We own Montgomery Properties, Montgomery Media, and the Montgomery Foundation. Current family assets are valued at approximately $2.3 billion. The room erupted. Gasps, shouts, the sound of chairs scraping as people stood to see the screens better. Marcus felt the floor tilt beneath him, his champagne glass slipping from numb fingers. "I walked away from all of it when I was 25, Catherine continued, her tone conversational as if discussing the weather. "I changed my name, built my career on my own merit, and when I met you, Marcus, I thought I'd found someone who valued intelligence and passion over bank accounts. I was wrong." Patricia watched Marcus's face cycle through shock, denial, and dawning horror. Vivian looked like she might vomit. "I've known about your affair with Vivian for 2 years, Catherine said, and the screen split to show photos. Marcus and Vivian kissing in his car. Entering hotels together. Her hand on his arm at restaurants while Catherine was supposedly at chemotherapy. I've documented everything. Every lie you told, every time you claimed to be working late while you were actually with her. Every dollar you spent on her using our joint account." The photos kept cycling, a devastating timeline of betrayal documented with brutal precision. Several guests were crying. Others looked furious. "But what I really want you to know, Marcus, is this: everything you think you've inherited from me is gone." Catherine's expression was almost pitying. "The house you're living in. I bought it with Montgomery family money before we married. It was held in my family trust, and you never had any legal claim to it. The estate you think you're about to inherit doesn't exist. I left everything to charities and foundations, with one exception." The screens showed documentation, legal papers that made Robert Chen nod with satisfaction. "Patricia Chen, my best friend, inherits my art collection. The pieces you called worthless hobbies? They're currently valued at approximately $40 million. The museum is getting my research and my positions endowment. The women's shelter where I volunteered is getting a permanent funding stream. Everyone I loved and every cause I believed in is provided for." Catherine leaned forward, her eyes boring through the screen into Marcus's soul. "You get nothing, Marcus. Nothing except the humiliation of having 200 witnesses watch you learn that you married your mistress based on money that never existed. Nothing except the knowledge that I knew exactly what you were doing and I let you do it because I wanted you to be completely, utterly committed before I destroyed you." The screens went black for a moment, then showed one final image, a legal document declaring Marcus's eviction from the house, scheduled for January 2nd. "Tomorrow." Catherine's voice returned one last time. "Oh, and Vivian? You should know that Marcus has been telling everyone you're pregnant. I had that investigated too. You're not pregnant. You were never pregnant. It was just another lie in a relationship built on nothing but deception and greed. Congratulations on your marriage. I hope you both enjoy the life you've built on my grave." The screens went dark. The ballroom remained frozen in stunned silence for approximately 3 seconds. Then chaos erupted. Guests were shouting, demanding explanations. Marcus's business partners were backing away like he had plague. Vivian was crying, mascara running down her face in black rivulets. Marcus stood paralyzed, his mind unable to process the magnitude of Catherine's revenge. Patricia felt tears on her face, but they weren't tears of grief anymore. They were tears of pride, of satisfaction, of witnessing justice delivered with surgical precision. Robert appeared at her side. The video has been sent to every major media outlet in Boston. It'll be trending on social media within the hour. Marcus Walsh's name will be synonymous with narcissistic gold digger for the rest of his life. Good, Patricia said simply. On the other side of the ballroom, Trevor approached Marcus with an expression of disgust. You knew she was rich? The whole time you were crying about how you couldn't afford this or that, how we needed to be careful about wedding expenses, you knew. I didn't know. Marcus's voice was desperate, pleading. I swear, I had no idea Catherine was a Montgomery. She never told me. But you knew about the affair, an elderly woman said, her voice dripping with contempt. She was Margaret Ashworth, one of Boston's society matrons whose opinion could make or break social standing. You were sleeping with your wife's assistant while she was dying of cancer. Marcus tried to speak, but no words came. What could he possibly say? Catherine had documented everything, had presented evidence so overwhelming that denial was impossible. Vivian grabbed his arm. Marcus, we need to leave. We need to get out of here. Where exactly are you planning to go? Robert Chen stepped forward, his attorney's briefcase in hand. The house is being seized tomorrow morning. All joint accounts have been frozen pending investigation into whether Marcus used Catherine's money to fund this wedding. The car you drove here? Also registered in Catherine's family trust. Vivian's face went from pale to green. What are you saying? I'm saying that as of midnight tonight, Marcus Walsh will be effectively homeless and penniless. Robert's smile was professionally pleasant. The credit cards in his wallet are already over limit from wedding expenses. His business accounts are being audited for commingling of personal and professional funds. And everyone in this room now knows that he's a cheating liar who married his mistress while his wife was dying. The guests were leaving now, a mass exodus of disgusted witnesses who couldn't wait to spread this story through Boston's elite circles. Marcus watched his reputation crumble with each departing couple, each scandalized whisper, each photo being taken on smartphones that would ensure this humiliation lived forever on the internet. A reporter approached, microphone extended. Mr. Walsh, Channel 7 News. Did you know about your wife's fortune when you married her? Marcus couldn't speak. His throat had closed, his mind gone blank. No comment, Vivian said, pulling him toward the exit. We have no comment. They made it to the parking lot before Vivian turned on him, fury replacing her earlier tears. You told me she was nobody. You said she had a modest inheritance, that we'd be comfortable but not wealthy. You said I was marrying you for love, not money. I thought that was true. I didn't know about the Montgomery connection. But you knew about the house? You knew it wasn't yours? Vivian's voice was climbing toward hysteria. What else did you lie about, Marcus? What else don't I know? He tried to take her hand, but she jerked away. Vivian, listen to me. We can get through this together. We'll figure something out. I still have my business, my connections, your business. She laughed, a sound edged with madness. Your business partners just watched you get exposed as a liar and a cheat. Your connections just witnessed your dead wife destroy you from beyond the grave. You have nothing, Marcus. Catherine made sure you have absolutely nothing. Marcus watched Vivian walk away, her wedding dress dragging through the parking lot dirt, and felt the full weight of Catherine's revenge settle onto his shoulders. His wife, his dead wife, the woman he'd dismissed as boring and insignificant, had orchestrated the complete annihilation of his life with the precision of a master strategist. His phone buzzed with notification after notification. News articles going live, social media posts spreading the video, friends and associates sending messages that ranged from shocked to disgusted to viciously gleeful at his downfall. Patricia Chen appeared in the doorway of the estate, backlit by the lights of the ballroom that was supposed to host Marcus's triumph. "She wanted me to give you a message," Patricia called across the parking lot. "Something she made me promise to say if everything went according to plan." Marcus looked up, broken and defeated. "Catherine said to tell you that underestimating people is a luxury only the powerless can afford." "And Marcus?" Patricia's smile was sharp and satisfied. "You're powerless now." She turned and walked back inside, leaving Marcus alone in the parking lot of his wedding reception, surrounded by the shattered remains of every lie he'd told and every assumption he'd made. Inside the ballroom, Robert Chen was directing the cleanup crew, ensuring every piece of equipment was documented, every witness statement recorded. This wasn't just revenge. It was a case study in strategic justice that would be analyzed and admired for years to come. Catherine Walsh had died of cancer at 45. But she'd lived long enough to ensure that the man who betrayed her would spend the rest of his life regretting every moment he underestimated the quiet woman with the art degree and the museum job. The video was already viral, the hashtag Catherine's Revenge trending worldwide. Legal analysts were discussing the brilliance of her estate planning. Relationship experts were citing her case as the ultimate example of documentation and preparation. Women's advocacy groups were celebrating her as a hero who'd struck back against infidelity and abuse. And Marcus Walsh, the man who'd thought himself so clever, so superior, so entitled to happiness at any cost, was learning the most expensive lesson of his life: some women don't break when you betray them. They plan. They document. They wait. And when they strike, they make sure you never forget what you lost. "You're absolutely right, I apologize. Let me continue the story to reach the full 14,000 words. The morning after the wedding, Marcus woke up in a hotel room he'd paid for with a credit card that would be declined by noon. Vivian was gone. Her wedding dress lay crumpled on the floor like a discarded dream, but her suitcase, her shoes, her phone, all of it had disappeared sometime during the night while he'd been passed out from too much scotch and too much shame. His phone had 63 missed calls, 42 text messages, 17 voicemails. He couldn't bear to look at any of them. Instead, he pulled up a web browser and made the mistake of searching his own name. The first result was a TMZ article: "Dead Wife's Billionaire Revenge, Museum Curator was Secret Heiress." The accompanying video had been viewed 4.7 million times in less than 12 hours. The second result was worse: husband marries mistress at wedding funded by dead wife's money, then learns wife was worth $2.3 billion. Marcus scrolled through article after article, each one more brutal than the last. Entertainment sites, news outlets, legal blogs, relationship forums, everyone was dissecting his humiliation with gleeful precision. The comments sections were vicious. "Imagine being so stupid you divorce a billionaire for a secretary. He married the mistress 3 weeks after the funeral. That's psychopath behavior. Catherine Montgomery is my hero. This is how you handle a cheating husband. The way she documented everything, planned everything, waited until he was completely committed. Iconic." Someone had created a TikTok compilation of his facial expressions during the video reveal, set to dramatic music. It had 8 million views. A Twitter thread analyzing Catherine's legal strategy had been retweeted 40,000 times. Instagram influencers were using his wedding as an example of instant karma. Marcus Walsh had become the internet's favorite villain overnight. A knock on the hotel door made him jump. He opened it to find Trevor, his former best man, holding a cardboard box. "Your stuff from the house," Trevor said without preamble, shoving the box into Marcus's arms. "The movers let me grab it before they locked everything down. This is all you're getting." Marcus looked into the box. A few clothes, some toiletries, his laptop, his watch collection. Everything else, 15 years of accumulated possessions, wedding gifts, furniture, art, all of it belonged to Catherine's estate. "Trevor, listen, I can explain, don't." Trevor's expression was cold. "I watched that video, Marcus. We all did. You didn't just cheat on your dying wife. You systematically erased her while she was still alive. You made plans to marry Vivian before Catherine was even in the ground. There's no explanation that makes that okay. I didn't know about the money, that makes it worse. Trevor's voice rose despite his obvious effort to remain calm. You threw away your marriage for nothing. You betrayed a woman who loved you, who hid her fortune because she wanted to be loved for herself, and you couldn't even do that. You couldn't love her without the money, Marcus. What does that say about you? Marcus had no answer. Trevor shook his head in disgust. The firm's board met this morning. We're removing you as partner. Your clients are being redistributed. You have 72 hours to clear out your office. Trevor turned to leave, then paused. And Marcus? Don't call me again. We're done. After Trevor left, Marcus sat on the hotel bed and tried to calculate his financial situation. The numbers were devastating. The house, gone, being seized to settle Catherine's estate claims. His share of Catherine's inheritance, non-existent, because she'd never owned anything in her own name. Everything was held in the Montgomery family trust. Joint accounts, frozen, under investigation for potential fraud. Credit cards, maxed out from wedding expenses, now his sole responsibility. Business partnership, terminated, meaning no income. Savings, approximately $8,000, which wouldn't last long in Boston. The wedding itself had cost nearly $70,000. Money he'd spent confidently, believing Catherine's estate would cover it. Now those bills were coming due, and he had no way to pay them. His phone rang. An unknown number. Against his better judgment, Marcus answered. Mr. Walsh, this is Jennifer Martinez from the Boston Globe. I'm writing a follow-up piece on your wedding video and I'd love to get your comment on a few things. No comment. Were you aware that your wife came from the Montgomery family when you married her? No comment. Did you begin your affair with Vivian Cross while Catherine was undergoing chemotherapy? Marcus hung up, but the phone immediately rang again. Different number, same type of call. Reporter after reporter, all wanting his side of the story, all asking questions designed to make him look worse than the video already had. He turned off his phone and lay back on the hotel bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out how his life had imploded so completely in less than 24 hours. Meanwhile, across Boston, Patricia Chen was having a very different morning. She woke up in her brownstone to find her phone buzzing with messages from art dealers, museum curators, and auction houses. Word had spread about her inheritance, and everyone wanted to discuss Catherine's collection. Robert Chen arrived at 9 with coffee and pastries, looking far too energized for someone who should have been exhausted from the previous night's drama. You're trending, he announced, settling into her kitchen. People are calling you the loyal best friend who stood by Catherine through everything. There's a hashtag #BestFriendGoals. Patricia scrolled through her social media, finding hundreds of messages from strangers thanking her for supporting Catherine, for keeping her promise, for helping execute the perfect revenge. Several news outlets had published sympathetic profiles about her 15-year friendship with Catherine. The art collection is generating serious interest, Robert continued, pulling out his tablet. I've had 3 major auction houses contact me this morning. Sotheby's is particularly interested in the Rothko piece. Did you know Catherine owned a Rothko? Patricia shook her head in wonder. She never told me. She had it hanging in her studio like it was a poster from Target. It's worth approximately $12 million. The Basquiat is worth another $8 million. There are 17 other pieces that range from $100,000 to $3 million each. Robert scrolled through the appraisal documents. Catherine had impeccable taste and incredible patience. She bought most of these from emerging artists 30 years ago and just waited. That was Catherine, Patricia said softly. Always playing the long game. Speaking of which, you should know that the video has been viewed over 20 million times now. It's been picked up by international news. The Montgomery family released a statement this morning. He showed Patricia his tablet. The statement was brief but devastating. the Montgomery family mourns the loss of Catherine Elizabeth Montgomery Walsh, a brilliant woman who chose to live her life on her own terms. We support the estate decisions she made and commend her courage in documenting and exposing the betrayal she suffered. Her legacy will live on through the foundations and charities she designated, and through the countless women who will be inspired by her strength. We have no comment on Mr. Walsh or Ms. Cross, as they are beneath our notice. The phrase "beneath our notice" was trending on Twitter, being used as the ultimate dismissal. Patricia's doorbell rang. She opened it to find a young woman in her 20s, holding a bouquet of flowers and crying. "I'm sorry to bother you," the woman said, wiping her eyes. I needed to thank you. My husband left me while I was pregnant with our second child. He cleaned out our accounts, moved in with his girlfriend, and everyone told me to just accept it and move on. But watching Catherine's video, seeing how she documented everything, how she planned and waited and made sure he couldn't just walk away without consequences, it gave me hope. It showed me I don't have to just accept being treated like garbage. Patricia hugged her, this stranger who represented thousands of others sending similar messages. Catherine's revenge had become something bigger than personal justice. It had become a symbol, a rallying cry, proof that women didn't have to suffer betrayal silently. "Catherine would be glad to know she helped you," Patricia said gently. She wanted other women to know they're not powerless. After the woman left, Robert showed Patricia the legal paperwork that would transfer the art collection into her name. "You'll need to decide what you want to keep and what you want to sell. The collection requires climate-controlled storage, insurance, security. It's not a small undertaking." Patricia thought about her modest brownstone, about her job as a graphic designer, about the life she'd built that was comfortable but not extravagant. $40 million in art was more than she'd ever imagined owning. "I want to keep the Rothko," she said finally. "Catherine showed it to me once, told me it reminded her of feelings too big for words. I want that piece in my home where I can see it every day and remember her. And the rest? Auction them. Use the money to establish a foundation in Catherine's name. Something that helps women leaving abusive marriages, that funds cancer research, that supports emerging artists the way Catherine supported them." Patricia looked at Robert. "She gave me this inheritance because she trusted me to do something meaningful with it. I want to honor that." Robert smiled. "She chose well. I'll start the paperwork." As Patricia sat in her kitchen, surrounded by evidence of Catherine's foresight and generosity, her phone buzzed with a news alert. "Marcus Walsh's business partner confirms termination. We cannot associate with someone who displays such fundamental character flaws." The dominoes were falling exactly as Catherine had predicted they would. Across town, Vivian Cross sat in her childhood bedroom at her mother's house, having fled the hotel in the middle of the night. Her wedding dress was in a garbage bag. Her wedding ring, a 2-carat diamond Marcus had bought on credit, sat on the dresser, mocking her. Her phone was off, but she'd made the mistake of using her mother's laptop to check social media. The results were catastrophic. Someone had created a side-by-side comparison of her Instagram posts from the past 2 years. On one side, photos of her looking sad and sympathetic, posting vague messages about difficult times and supporting friends through illness. On the other side, the photos from Catherine's video showing her and Marcus together during those exact same time periods. The caption, "Vivian Cross pretended to care about Catherine Walsh while sleeping with her husband. This is what a snake looks like." Her Instagram account had been flooded with comments calling her a homewrecker, a gold digger, a heartless monster. Someone had found her acting headshots and created a meme, "Vivian Cross, great at playing the victim, terrible at playing human." Her agent had dropped her that morning with a terse email, "Given the current circumstances and public perception, we feel it's best to part ways. Good luck with your future endeavors." The museum where she'd worked as Catherine's assistant had released a statement, "Ms. Cross's employment was terminated months ago due to violations of our professional conduct policy. We were unaware of the full extent of her relationship with Mr. Walsh and condemn her actions as a betrayal of trust and basic human decency." Vivian's mother knocked on the door and entered without waiting for an answer. Ellen Cross was 63, a former beauty queen who'd married poorly and spent her life disappointed that her daughter hadn't secured a wealthy husband. "This is a disaster," Ellen said, sitting on the bed. "Do you have any idea how this makes our family look? I'm the victim here." Vivian's voice was shrill with desperation. "Marcus lied to me. He told me Catherine was nobody, that she had a modest inheritance, that we'd be comfortable but not wealthy. He used me." "You were sleeping with a married man while his wife was dying of cancer," Ellen said coldly. "There's no version of this story where you're the victim, Vivian. But I didn't know about the money, that's not the point. The point is you destroyed a dying woman's final months for a man who turned out to be worthless. You threw away your career, your reputation, everything, for nothing." Ellen stood up, her expression disgusted. "I raised you better than this." After her mother left, Vivian pulled out her phone and made the call she'd been avoiding. Marcus answered on the first ring. "Vivian, thank God. Where are you? We need to talk about, I want an annulment." Silence. "What?" "An annulment, Marcus. The marriage was based on fraud. You told me you had money. You told me we'd be secure. You lied about everything." Vivian's voice was hard, businesslike. "I'm filing tomorrow. Don't contest it. Vivian, please, we can work through this, there's nothing to work through. You're broke, your career is over, and you're about to be evicted from your house. I'm 26 years old and my acting career is destroyed because I married you." She laughed bitterly. Catherine won, Marcus. She won so completely that we're both ruined. The only difference is, I can still walk away. I can change my name, move to another city, start over. You're Marcus Walsh forever. The cheating husband who married his mistress 3 weeks after the funeral. That's your legacy now. I love you, you love what you thought I could give you. Status, youth, a fresh start. Well, I can't give you any of that anymore." Vivian's voice softened slightly. "We were both using each other, Marcus. Let's at least be honest about that. I wanted your money and you wanted my youth. Neither of us got what we wanted. Let's just end this before it gets worse." She hung up before he could respond. In his hotel room, Marcus stared at his phone and felt the last piece of his new life crumble away. Vivian was right. They'd been using each other, both convinced they were getting the better end of the deal. Catherine had seen through both of them and had constructed a revenge so perfect it destroyed them both simultaneously. His laptop pinged with an email from the hotel, his credit card had been declined. He had until noon to provide new payment or be asked to leave. Marcus opened his banking app and looked at the $8,247 remaining in his personal account. That money needed to cover food, shelter, transportation, and living expenses until he could find new employment. In Boston, it wouldn't last a month. He started searching for jobs, but his name was toxic now. A quick Google search would reveal everything. No firm would hire him, no client would trust him, no professional organization would welcome him. Marcus Walsh had become unemployable. His phone rang again. Another unknown number. This time it was his landlord from the apartment he'd rented before marrying Catherine. "Mr. Walsh, I saw the news. I'm calling to inform you that we won't be able to rent to you again. Our policy is clear about background checks and public reputation. I was never convicted of anything, you don't need to be convicted to be a PR nightmare. I'm sorry, but we can't associate our property with your situation." 3 more apartments rejected him that afternoon. By evening, Marcus realized he was facing homelessness not because he couldn't afford rent, but because nobody wanted to be associated with the man who'd betrayed his dying wife. Patricia called Robert that evening with an update. The Rothko sold. $12.3 million. The buyer wants to remain anonymous but insisted the sale price include a donation to the Catherine Montgomery Foundation in her honor. "People are really responding to her story," Robert said. "The foundation has received over $2 million in donations from strangers who watched the video and wanted to contribute to her causes. Catherine would be amazed." Catherine would be satisfied, Patricia corrected. She planned this whole thing knowing it would resonate. She told me once that the best revenge isn't making someone suffer, it's making them irrelevant while you do something important. Marcus Walsh is certainly irrelevant now. Last I heard, he's couch surfing with a college acquaintance who felt sorry for him. Vivian filed for annulment this morning, citing fraud. She's moving to Los Angeles to start fresh, though given how viral this story is, I doubt geography will help much. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Do you think Catherine would be happy? Knowing what happened to them? I think Catherine would be glad that other women saw what's possible when you document, plan, and refuse to be a victim. Robert's voice was thoughtful. The revenge was satisfying, sure. But the real victory is that Catherine Montgomery's name will be remembered for her philanthropy, her intelligence, and her strategic brilliance. Marcus Walsh will be remembered as a cautionary tale. That's the ultimate win. 6 months later, Patricia stood in the newly opened Catherine Montgomery Center for Women's Advocacy, a state-of-the-art facility funded by the art collections sale. The center offered legal aid, financial planning, counseling, and career support for women leaving difficult marriages or facing betrayal. The walls featured photographs of Catherine throughout her life, as a young artist, as a museum curator, as a volunteer, as a friend. In every photo, her intelligence and kindness shone through. There was no mention of Marcus Walsh. He'd been edited out of her story entirely, which seemed the most fitting punishment of all. She'd love this, Patricia said to Robert, who stood beside her at the ribbon-cutting ceremony. She planned this. Down to the paint colors and the programming. Robert handed her a final letter from Catherine, one he'd been instructed to deliver 6 months after her death. Patricia opened it with trembling hands. Dear Patricia, if you're reading this, it means 6 months have passed since my death. It means you've seen Marcus's face when he learned the truth. It means you've watched my revenge unfold exactly as I planned it. I hope it was satisfying. I hope you felt, even for a moment, that justice exists in this world. But more than that, I hope you've taken my inheritance and done something meaningful with it. I hope you've helped other women who were where I was, betrayed, dying, watching someone they loved erase them from existence. Marcus thought I was weak because I was dying. He thought I was insignificant because I lived quietly. He made the mistake that so many people make, he confused gentleness with powerlessness. I want my legacy to be a reminder that we are never as powerless as people think. That documentation is power. That planning is power. That patience is the greatest power of all. I loved Marcus once. That love died long before my body did. What replaced it wasn't hatred, it was clarity. Clarity about who he was, what he valued, and exactly how to ensure he'd regret underestimating me. Thank you for keeping your promise. Thank you for being the friend I needed when I had no one else. Thank you for making sure my final act of agency succeeded. Use the money well. Help women fight back. Show them they don't have to suffer silently. And if you ever think of me, don't remember me as Marcus's victim. Remember me as the woman who turned her deathbed into a war room and won the most important battle of her life. With love and gratitude, Catherine Patricia folded the letter carefully, tears streaming down her face. Around her, women were touring the center, learning about resources available to them, finding hope in the story of a woman who'd refused to go quietly into death. Marcus Walsh's story had a different ending. He'd moved to a small town in Vermont, working as a sales associate at an electronics store and living in a studio apartment he could barely afford. His LinkedIn profile listed him as between opportunities. His phone stayed mostly silent. His social life consisted of acquaintances who didn't know his history. He'd Googled Catherine's name once, 6 months after the wedding disaster. The search results were glowing, articles about her philanthropy, her foundation, her brilliant strategic mind. Her video had been used in legal seminars as an example of perfect estate planning. Business schools were teaching her revenge as a case study in long-term strategic thinking. His own name brought up the wedding video, still viral after half a year, still generating millions of views from people who wanted to witness the moment a cheating husband learned he'd thrown away billions. The comments had evolved from mockery to something worse, pity. People pitied him now, which somehow hurt more than the hatred had. Vivian had changed her name to Victoria Summers and was working as a real estate agent in San Diego. She'd gotten engaged to a dentist she'd met at an open house, someone who had no idea about her past. She never mentioned Boston, never spoke of Marcus, and kept her social media private. Trevor had married and occasionally posted photos of his growing family. Marcus wasn't invited to the wedding. None of his former friends maintained contact. The professional world had closed its doors to him permanently. On what would have been his one-year anniversary with Vivian, Marcus sat alone in his Vermont apartment and finally allowed himself to fully comprehend what he'd lost. Not the money, though that stung, but Catherine herself. The woman who'd been brilliant enough to hide a billion-dollar fortune. Strategic enough to document 2 years of evidence. Patient enough to wait until the perfect moment to strike. He'd been married to someone extraordinary and had treated her like she was ordinary. Had dismissed her intelligence as pretension, her kindness as weakness, her quiet strength as insignificance. Catherine Montgomery Walsh had given him exactly what he deserved, a front-row seat to his own destruction, witnessed by millions, preserved forever on the internet as a warning about the cost of cruelty. The following year, on the anniversary of Catherine's death, Patricia organized a memorial service at the museum where Catherine had worked. 200 people attended, colleagues, artists she'd supported, women she'd helped through her foundation, strangers whose lives had been changed by her story. Marcus wasn't invited. His name was never spoken. He existed now only as the husband in Catherine's story, a footnote to her brilliance, a cautionary tale told to remind people that actions have consequences. The Catherine Montgomery Foundation expanded to 3 cities, helping thousands of women annually. Patricia became its director, channeling Catherine's philosophy into practical support that empowered women to document, plan, and fight back against betrayal. And in living rooms and coffee shops and therapy sessions across the country, women told each other about Catherine Walsh, the quiet museum curator who'd turned her deathbed into a strategic command center and delivered justice with such perfect precision that it became legendary. The story wasn't about revenge, really. It was about something more important, proof that being underestimated could be a weapon if you were patient enough to wield it properly. Catherine Montgomery Walsh had died at 45, her body destroyed by cancer but her mind sharp until the very end. She'd spent her final months ensuring that the man who'd betrayed her would spend the rest of his life as a warning. Some women scream when they're hurt. Some women cry. Catherine Montgomery Walsh documented, planned, and struck with such devastating accuracy that her revenge became a masterclass in strategic justice. And somewhere, in whatever exists beyond death, Catherine was smiling. Because she'd won. Completely. Perfectly. Forever. Marcus Walsh would grow old alone, his name permanently attached to one of the internet's most famous revenge stories. Vivian would always wonder if her past would catch up to her. But Catherine Montgomery Walsh would be remembered as a philanthropist, a visionary, and proof that even in death, a brilliant woman could orchestrate justice. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you love this story of ultimate justice, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.